What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Athletes Helping Athletes podcast. It's great to have everybody back. Our last podcast was our second installment with Colin Byros, which if you have not gotten a chance to check that out, a link will be put in our description. Colin was able to further expound upon what it's like to be somebody that strives to be a professional athlete and comes up short. It is a soccer-heavy podcast, so if you're not a soccer person, there are good things in there. You just have to get through the minutia of some very in-depth soccer conversation. Today, we have two very special guests, and it was very important for me to dive into working with coaches more because this year, one of the most famous coaches in college football, Ryan Day, said something that shook me to my core. Ryan Day said, after losing to Michigan multiple times, it was equal to the death of his father. Now, for those of you that don't know, I am a licensed professional clinical counselor actively working in the field. So when I hear somebody say that a sports match, game, moment is equal to the death of one of the most important people in their lives, it made me stop in my tracks and think, why are we not serving our coaches? So we are very conscious about mental health today. Or we say that we're very conscious about mental health today. And we put a lot of pressure on the men and women that lead young men and women's lives to be more mentally conscious and giving them tools to success. But do we ever ask the people behind that how they have crafted success? Do we ever ask the people behind the leadership, what do you do for your own mental health? Like our coaches. And today, we have a very special coach in the building and his missus. Sitting across from me are Mr. and Mrs. Kohmann. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Living the dream.
Love this. So to set up the stage here for people, I always try to make sure that everybody knows how I know our guests. Mr. Kohmann was one of my, if not my favorite teacher in high school.
Thank you.
My junior year, I took his AutoCAD class. And for those of you that know anything about therapists, we are terrible with mathematics, and AutoCAD and drawing and all of those things are mathematically inclined. I had no business being in his class. But the one really cool thing about Mr. K was he's a sports guy. And if I could get you to talk about sports, it always hopefully led to a good grade. For somebody that's not good at math, can I distract him with the sports so that the work that suffers because I don't know math will get us through? And over the course of time, me and Mr. K became very close. I was playing soccer. He was coaching tennis. And there just became this great degree of love, respect, and appreciation. Fast forward, let's call it 17 years, which makes me want to throw up. That probably makes you guys want to throw up. I have gotten to where I'm at now, and I saw Coach at Jackson, and he is now the coach, boys and girls coach at Mount Union. And him and I started talking about mental health or mental fitness. And it led to this conversation that he blessed me with, was having a full-on conversation with your boys and your girls. Also talking a little bit about spirituality, which gave me the opportunity to say, hey, I would like to have a coach in the space to really learn about what it's like to be a coach. And that's how I know Mr. K and Mrs. K. So thank you guys for being here.
Our pleasure.
If you could tell the people a little bit more about your journey as to how you got into coaching and even into the education system.
Okay. So I attended Ohio State, was set on criminal justice as a major, and realized quickly that as a criminal justice major, you don't have much of a life outside of your job. Kind of ironic. Education and coaching might be similar, but it's a little bit different. Anyway, didn't have a major for a while. My wife, who was at Ohio State at the time also, we weren't married then. We started talking about majors, and she was like, I'm ready to graduate here soon. Are you going to pick a major? And I ended up in education because I said I wanted to be a coach. And that allowed me to become a teacher and be a coach. If you would have asked me, 22-year-old me what I'd be coaching, I would have said basketball. Love basketball. Played basketball for a while, through middle school, junior high, a little bit in high school, but played tennis all 4 years of high school, and had success at tennis. I was blessed with the opportunity to get a teaching job at Jackson, which led to the opportunity to coach some JV tennis, which led to the opportunity to be the boys coach there, and that led to becoming the girls coach there. Loved that, had success at that, met great people, and eventually left high school tennis, was a dad for a while, watched my kids compete at what they were competing at, and the opportunity came to be a college coach. When I first talked to Mount Union, I told him I wasn't the right person. And after another conversation with my wife, she was like, how many opportunities do you get like this? Maybe you should explore it a little more. And here we are, however many years later, and I'm enjoying it. It's a different challenge every single day, and it's very different than high school tennis. So,
Absolutely. Can I ask you a question? Because I haven't coached in officially 4 years. I stopped coaching. So for those of you that don't know, when I was at Mount Union, so I went to Mount Union in 2009 to play soccer. I left after the first semester, and I called my high school coach, Mike Byros, because I came back home, and I said, Coach, I would like to start coaching. And that was the start point. Let's call it 2010, I started coaching. I started coaching Jackson Select. Jackson Select became Canton Akron Soccer, which now is Canton Akron Force. So now I was coaching at the club level. I was also doing private lessons. And then I want to say 2013, I started coaching alongside of him at the high school level.
right.
During your time away, how was it being kind of on the sidelines and just being a dad?
Oh, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I played a lot of golf during that time because my kids were playing golf. I had evenings free. It was great. I'm not gonna lie, it was great. I had a lot of free time. Yard looked good too.
I was just thinking, our yard never looked so good so quickly into the season. I would agree with that.
Love that. What made you want to go back?
The opportunity, the challenge, her saying, are you going to get this opportunity again? I don't, what resonated with me was, the opportunity's there. You should explore it, do your due diligence. And I made the right choice. It's a different, as I said, it's a different challenge. But I'm currently blessed with great kids. You met them. They're personable, they're coachable, and they're good human beings, which is a blessing. So,
did you have an itch during that time to get back, or was it just like being a dad was great? Because I would tell you right now, for me, if somebody asked me, do you want to go back to coaching? Do you miss coaching? I would tell them I miss working with the athletes. I don't know if I necessarily miss coaching.
That's a great question because there's a lot of levels to that. Do you miss the day-to-day competition? Absolutely. Do you miss the grind of teaching all day, going to, let's say, Boardman or wherever on a long trip in the evening on a weekday? No. And you know those trips on a random Tuesday night going to Boardman or wherever.
On the yellow bus.
On the yellow Cadillac. There's certain aspects that I'm not gonna divulge on what is part of the coaching aspect at the high school level that I don't miss, because that part of it is strictly parents being parents.
Sure.
So, that's a whole nother podcast right there.
Indeed.
Especially for certain sports.
Indeed.
So
I don't know that you necessarily ever left coaching completely.
well, there is
because
that. Yes,
even
she's
though
right.
you weren't coaching tennis, you were still coaching our children.
That's
Caden
true.
was you
That's
were
true.
still doing his basketball team, and so
Yeah.
you were still involved at a different level.
Yeah, I was coaching in-house JYBA, and then was helping out on the travel team. So I was still coaching 2 teams, I guess you'd say. But yeah, so, but that's youth at a different level. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Selfishly, because you brought it up, which was a great point. One thing that I've tried to have to reason with myself a lot with is I'm blessed with other friends that are coaches, and my best friend in the world definitely loves coaching his kids. But in my head, I'm like, I don't know if I ever want to coach my kids. And I heard something that Drew Joyce said in one of the documentaries that he did with LeBron is there was a point in time that I couldn't recognize, was I talking to my dad or was I talking to my coach, because I had had my father as a coach for so long that the line was blurry. And in my head, if my boys play soccer, it's almost like I know too much, and I don't ever want to lose my identity as a father. Like, I always want them to know this is dad. What was your process like trying to make sure that you were able to maintain that difference between, hey, dad doesn't need to be your coach, I'm still dad and I love you, but if you want me to coach, I can coach you too?
So that's a good question also. In-house, I was both of our kids' head coach for in-house. And that's competition, but it's developmental, and it's not necessarily about wins and losses, but it's about developing the players. Travel's a different animal. When you're playing in tournaments, 2 games on Friday, pool play, bracket play Saturday, Sunday, whatever. That's about winning. And I saw her face there. That's when you get into discussions
That's when it
on
becomes my turn to talk.
playing time and things like that. Because you're playing to win at that point. So that becomes a sensitive area.
Well, I think what's important for people to know is that our children were introduced into the world of athletics from the moment they were born.
Facts.
For example, when Kelsey Joy was born, John Cooper had lost to South Carolina.
Correct. Kelsey was born New Year's Day, January 1st,
10101.
2001.
And the phone calls that came into the hospital were not necessarily about congratulations on the birth of your first child, but rather, what do you think about Cooper being fired? And I remember many people calling in wanting to talking about that, and was like, well, wait a minute. We just had a baby.
Yeah.
When Caden was born, he was, because of Kelsey being an emergency C-section, I had to have a scheduled C-section with Caden. This gentleman scheduled our C-section, asked for permission to get it a day early so that we would be home in time to watch the Penn State, Ohio State football game as a family. So not just one, but 2, both of our children, their lives began based around what's going on in the sports world. And then he'll go on to tell you, I'm sure, our children learn their numbers by jerseys, their colors by jerseys. They're incredible. If you think this man knows sports, our daughter just got accepted into a PhD program, and she's getting ready to do an entire dissertation on the organization and behavioral management of sports.
They're sports junkies.
They are sports junkies.
Love that.
And they know their stuff. They can hold a conversation about sports.
So I think it's very interesting when you ask where's the line between coach and dad, because dad is coach, period. And they respect him. Keith is such a hands-on coach. He's that person that doesn't just care about, the low to high, getting the serve in, tossing, things of such. He wants to be involved entirely. He wants to make sure that you are a student in the classroom. He wants to make sure that you're, whatever relationships you're in, whatever's going on at home, whatever you might be battling is being addressed, and that you're happy and you're having fun. And he has been able to, at Mount, really do a lot more of that than he could all of the years that he spent at Jackson, because the pressure's a little different. Mm-hmm. It's a lot different for various reasons. But I think for our children, they were born and raised on a tennis court. There was one day we were driving past the courts at North Park, and people were playing tennis. It's a community park. It's what they do. And Caden was Dad, did they get your permission to play on those courts? So I mean, it's a situation where it became very difficult for them to see the difference between, is this my dad or is this my coach? And when he made the comment about in-house and then going to travel, and now travel was about winning, do not let him fool you. I know you think I laugh because of about travel. I laugh because in-house was also about winning.
Well, if you have the opportunity.
It's always about winning. If I had $1 for every time this man said to me, it's my job to put the best players on the court to get the W, then that's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think we started having challenges when it came to being dad versus coach, because when you are in the 4th grade and you're playing travel, is it really that important to have the best on the court and your daughter doesn't see a second of playing time? We're in the 4th grade. And so there were a lot of things that came into play at that point.
Yeah, you start to figure some things out.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
You start having different conversations when you come home. When you have been traveling Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for these basketball games, and they're long days, and they're, everybody's tired and whatnot. It's learning that when you get into the car, we don't need to talk about the game right now. Mm-hmm. She's 8. He's 10.
Decompress. Reevaluate later.
It doesn't matter what they just did in the moment. Can we just be a family? And I think that's
a mind shift.
It was a huge mind shift that, in all honesty, I didn't see him make until his coach, one of his assistant coaches at Mount Union, was having children. And he would come home and say, "Oh, Coach," am I allowed to say his name?
Sure.
Coach Jeffries needs to go and do something with his wife and kids. And, I started hearing all these things, and I'm like, that is so cool. I'm so impressed. And I'm so jealous, because that wasn't his frame of mind. That's not how he worked as a coach. He was all in. I'm coach first, then I become this, and this. So it was an interesting journey.
Takes growth.
It's interesting you say that, both of you. It's interesting you say that, because something that I particularly say to a lot of people in my office, and I don't know if I'll say the names of the celebrities that I reference. I don't know if they'll ever see it. I mean, no offense if you guys ever see this. Probably not. But I always wonder, when you look at Tom Brady in his last year with the Bucs, and he played well below his TB12 standard. Mm-hmm. From my mental health brain, it's very simple. Well, Tom Brady lost his wife. Mm-hmm. And my question, if I could ever sit down with Tom, would be, did TB12 choose football over Tom? Which means he chose football over his family. Which, in one way, we spend so much time pouring into our professional lives because that's what we're told to do. You want to be a master at your craft no matter what that is. But that doesn't necessarily lead its way into your personal life, though. And sometimes we become so comfortable in our professional identity, it swallows our personal identity whole until something shakes that professional identity that says, oh, wait, Tom is still in there, and Tom is not happy with TB12 because Tom is now suffering, and now TB12 is suffering. That's always been a question I've wanted to ask him.
There's no doubt that as you're on your journey and attempting to blaze your trail or make your mark or whatever you want to say, that you're kind of got that tunnel vision on what your goal is, beating, winning a championship, whatever that looks like, that tunnel vision more than likely blocks what truly makes you happy or you who you are. And that's difficult to figure out in that moment, because you haven't probably lived that before. And in hindsight, looking back, like, I probably missed out on certain things because I did choose coaching at that point, because I was on this tunnel vision trail of trying to do this with the athletes I had at that point in time, if that makes sense.
Makes so much sense.
So, but, you don't see it then. You really, truly don't see it then.
I don't think you're given the space to see it. And, unfortunately, it's something that I've found along the way in my almost 7 years of being a therapist is even this conversation is an uncommon conversation.
Yeah, and like I had a conversation with one of my senior students today, and he was like, I can't believe like we only have like 5 weeks left. Everyone says it goes by so quick. Same thing happens when you're trying to make your mark, whatever your goal was, and you've got that tunnel vision, like time is moving and you don't get that time back. And you don't know it at that point in time. So,
something my father used to say all the time, and it used to make me so angry. And this is like the immaturity of Q at that point. I used to be like, Dad, today was so fast. And he's like, son, if you thought it was fast for you, you can't imagine what it was like for me.
Yeah.
And I always used to want to, get the fisticuffs up with my dad and be like, you're not validating my feelings. What do you mean? Like, you don't know. But the older I get, and with, an almost 2-year-old and an almost 4-year-old, some of my clients come in and talk to me. I'm like, I barely know what day of week it is. And before I know it, it's New Year's, it's Easter, and we're going to be in August before I know it, just because, things are moving so fast.
Hey, teacher here, let's not wish away summer, okay?
Okay.
We don't say the A word.
My bad.
I just had that very same conversation with Caden today, because he's 3 weeks from coming home, wrapping up his freshman year at Ohio State. And I'm like, dude, can you believe your freshman year is almost over? And he said, Mom, it went by so fast. And I said, dude, don't blink. I said, freshman year is the longest one. I said, before you know, you're going to be done. You're going to be graduating. And it's crazy how time flies. And, you look back and, you have all these images of things that have gone on over the last 28 years of being married. And one thing that Keith has always done is, yes, I've got that tunnel vision on what I need to do here, but he always included his wife and his children in his tunnel. He wanted us to be there, and he made sure that we were included. He made sure that it was family oriented. There are now at the courts these bathrooms that I would have loved to have had, because
Not a porta-john?
It's just a porta-john, and my children were potty trained in a porta-john, but that's okay, because those were the choices that I made to be there so that we could be a part of his world. and we could all be together. He could continue to coach, and our children could still be there. And the things that our children have learned from all the years that we spent, you know, even right down to the days where it would rain, and it never failed. If it was the Federal League tournament or the sectional tournament, it was going to rain. We were going to end up at the Louis Thomas Indoor Facility.
AKA the Hall of Fame Fitness
Shout
Center.
out there to you, Lewis, for the Hall of Fame Fitness Center. We were going to end up in there all day, and our kids were just going to have to do what they needed to do. And, you know, we had plenty of food for them. We always made sure I had, you know, books and Uno cards and games and, you know, you name it. And they adjusted.
Their people that they looked up to were players on the team. Like, that's who they associated with, because that's who they were around quite a bit at the time. And when she says they were born and raised on the tennis courts, like, they weren't playing. They were spectators, our biggest fans, drawing pictures, doing chalk on the sidewalk at the tennis courts. We had a little shed eventually that we got there that they decorated with pictures on the inside of the shed, because they loved to think that that was their office, because there was a desk in there. So, yeah. Good times.
That's cool to think about. It's a different perspective, but that's you know, you guys beautifully put it. Like, that's a cool picture when you guys can both be on the same page and allow those what could be dividing moments to actually be memorable moments. Because I'm thinking of Miracle on Ice. And I'm thinking of like one specific moment where, you know, the coach comes home and the wife is irate because she's like, you don't even know what type of day I've had, and you're out coaching Team USA, and you didn't even ask me how I felt.
Oh, we had plenty of those. Those happened. But
Yeah. I mean, in different times, too. I mean, you know, phones now make it, you know, that gap can be closed a little bit with phones now as far as communication goes. But I think the funny thing, going back to the days of coaching high school tennis, is people always ask, so your kids play tennis? And they neither one of them had any interest from a little tiny, you know, 3-year-old or whatever, all the way up through high school. And now, ironically, they both pick up a racket and play from time to time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I was just going to use Kelsey's, our daughter's term. I recreationally play tennis. And Caden's into pickleball and is trying to get me to cross over into the sport of pickleball, which I have not journeyed to yet. But I think I think they're going to break me. So that might happen this summer. We'll see.
Uh-oh. Yeah, I think I made a critical mistake as a father so far with my kids, because both of my kids pick up golf clubs, plastic clubs, and they're swinging, and that's an expensive venture.
Yes, it is. Good luck, sir.
It is.
That's where ours ended up.
It is an expensive venture, but it's like tennis. It's a lifelong sport, and she's right. That's where both of ours ended up playing in high school was golf, and I still love to play with the kids today. That kind of goes back to, you know, your question about coaching. Even though I might not have been coaching at the time tennis, I was actually playing a lot of golf with our children and helping them out with that, because they both picked that sport up. And that's, I always say, bad golf for 3 hours of walking around, at least I got some exercise. Like, and it usually is quality time with the individual or individuals that you're with. I enjoy it. It's like mowing for me. It's a release. It's something where I can clear my mind, at least get steps in, and breathe fresh air. So, but the kids both enjoy the game. And Caden, when he was home for his spring break, we played 9 together. So. That's kind of the thing to do. Karen doesn't play with us, though.
Well, I stopped playing. Keith and I played together in college quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I stopped playing when Kelsey was, I think, 4, and she outdrove me. And I said, I think maybe I'll just keep score. Maybe that'll just be a better option here. But Keith graduated with his master's when Kelsey was 18 months, and we had a celebration for him, and somebody had bought him a gift card to Dick's, and he said to me, "Do you mind if I spend this on Kelsey?" And I was like, "It's your gift card. What are you going to get her?" And he's like, "I'll show you." Came back home and had Kelsey's first set of clubs. And so from 2 years old, that was something that they did. And to this day, like he said, that's their thing. They still enjoy the sport. They enjoy it to just sit and watch it. They enjoy talking about it. We've been blessed to become friends with a professional golfer, and we thoroughly enjoy him and his family, and their son and our son have become very good friends. And it's very exciting to be a part of that sport. That's one of the things about tennis and golf is they truly are gentlemen sports.
Yeah.
And they truly are sports that teach you things on and off the court that can be used in real life. And they're also sports that can be played forever.
I said to my ladies team last night, we played Geneva last night, and we started outside. We got doubles in outside. We got in a little bit of singles, and the rain came. And we ended up going inside, so we went from 6 courts to 4 courts. So 2 of the matches had already been started. They were in their first sets, and those ladies had to wait until courts were open for them to play. And we did not, I'm not going to sugarcoat, we did not play well in doubles last night. And I had probably my most animated conversation with them. We played really well in singles, and we ended up securing a 4-3 win. And I said to him afterwards, I was like, listen, life lesson here. Not every day goes the way you think it's going to go. You're going to be a professional in 4 or 5 years, and you're going to start out giving a presentation and something's going to happen, or you're going to be doing this professionally and something's going to happen. And it's how you adjust and how you respond to a situation. And you just live through multiple challenges in today's match, whether it was rain, whether it was have to wait to play, whether it was you were injured, which all of those were scenarios that went on last night. How do you put your best foot forward? How do you make adjustments? And how do you persevere to have success? Those are life lessons. You'll take today's experience with you, and you're going to use that at some point in life. That's what that's what it's all about right there. So,
what are because we're a mental fitness podcast here.
By the way, shout out to you.
Oh,
because that win yesterday more than likely doesn't happen without your conversation with our athletes. I watched, and I said this to her dad. We talked to him on the way here. I watched multiple athletes last night refocus themselves, whether it was a coping mechanism you talked about by adjusting strings, whether it was breathing, whether it was staring at the screen or the fence or whatever. But we persevered and got through situations last night that 3 weeks ago we would not have. So
that is
shout out to you.
Thank you. That's a blessing to hear. I mean, that's the hope. You want to give those athletes agency in those moments to know that they have a tool. I think a lot of athletes get in those panic moments, and obviously when your mind is racing, you don't think you have a tool. You don't think you have any way to shift your mindset or shift your mentality, and sometimes it's the simplest, most littlest things. And I think we know in tennis or in golf, there's a OCD-like habit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a waggle or two, or, there's the pre-ball bounce, pre-serve, flip the hair, and all those things.
Yeah.
There's the Kevin Durant shimmy at the free throw line.
Yep.
And we laugh at those things, but if you really look at what those things represent and how they can be used as a reset and a tool that allows the game to slow down, the body to slow down, the mind to slow down.
That's the key right there, because we have a habit of playing faster when we need to play slower.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the acknowledgement of that, and the shift in being able to do that is huge. And that was one of the reasons we got through yesterday. So
that is fantastic. Great to hear. No, I have no pride or horses in the race when it comes to what I do. I just want to give all the tools to everybody, and then if they work, fantastic. And even I hope that some of those tools that some of those players found, like you said, even more importantly, the athletic arena, whether we like to admit it or not, as D2, D3 players, and even for the overwhelming majority of D1 players, this is the foundational blueprint to life.
yeah.
But there seems to be a disconnect for most athletes where it's like, once the athletic identity dies, I don't know how to carry those tools into life quite yet. But they're all right there.
Oh, they're definitely there. They're definitely there. It's just a matter of when and how to apply them.
Makes sense.
And what scenario requires what. I think that's probably the biggest thing right there is, all right, I'm in this situation. What do I do? How do I do it? I've lived through experiences of challenge, of setback, of defeat, of injury. All right, well, my professional situation I'm in is not an injury, but it's whatever I'm going through professionally is still a setback, and I've lived through setbacks. So what do I have to do? How do I have to do it? What's my coping mechanism? Who do I go to? Who are my go-tos? So.
And you leave us with great things, because you're leading us into what I want to ask is, what are some of the things over the past, let's call it 28 years of marriage plus coaching, that you have had to learn as a coach after those losses, and even as a wife, like when coach comes home and it's like, it's been a bad outing. What are some of the coping tools that you've learned even for your own mental fitness as a coach? Because we do place so much pressure on you to care and finish almost the development of the young man and young woman and get their mental health right. But what do you do as a coach to keep your mental health right?
I mow the yard.
I was just going to say, puts his AirPods in and he mows the yard.
I call it me time. Like, I get lost mowing the yard. I really do. I used to use a walk behind mower, a nice 50-inch walk behind, and stripe it up, like mow everything twice. And don't answer phone calls, just get lost mowing and trimming and blowing off the sidewalk in the driveway. And I still do that. That's one of my coping mechanisms. I turned to golf, like same deal. Like on my Apple Watch, I can tell who's calling me, whether I want to talk to them or not. Like you need that break, you need that escape, you need that reset. It's how I reset, I guess. And I don't know what her take would be on this. I tried really, really hard not to bring setbacks home with me. I don't know how well I did with that.
Well, I would say the first word that came to mind when the question was asked was just resiliency. And there aren't many people in the world who are as resilient as Keith Kohmann. There is just something about him that you can push him down and he's going to get right back up. And he's going to do it in such a calm and mature fashion that you don't even realize that there's a struggle. And that has been a remarkable thing to watch. We started our life with a house fire and complete. I mean, we were in disarray.
Yeah,
from
total
the time
loss.
From the time that we graduated from college and got married, it was like the first probably 10 years were just like, are you kidding me? Like, it got to the point where we're just a bad country song. And people looked at us and were like, why are you always laughing? Why are you always kind? Why are you always positive? Are you not aware of what just happened to you? Yeah, we're totally aware. But, first and foremost, we have our faith.
Yeah. God's funny.
We got a lot of questions for the big man when we get up there, but I mean, there are a lot of times that we turn and we're like, seriously, okay, we know God's got a sense of humor, because that's just not funny, dude. Come on now. But we spend a lot of time, reflecting on where our blessings come from and what we have been given, and we're aware. We know we're lucky. We know we're blessed. We know that even in the hard times, and, not to belittle any losses on the court, we've experienced much greater things off the court, that when it goes to dealing with those things that happen on the court, we got this. We got this. And we've got it because there is that camaraderie. It's that foundation that he establishes. This is who we are. We're a team. We're here for each other. We've got each other's back. And we've had a lot of players over the years who still, to this day, are coming out of the woodwork wanting to share in the awesome things that are happening in their lives and some of the not so awesome things. We mentored a lot of people over a lot of years, which I think made those losses much easier to get through, and all of those hard times, because we understood, there's a maturity about Keith that, he understands that, yes, the wins and losses, those are important things, but people are people, and we're going to put people first. And he's always done a remarkable job of doing just that. And so there, when he came home, you didn't, you knew you were sad. You were, you felt all of the feels. But he never made it seem like it was something that was going to change our lives.
It wasn't gloom and doom.
No. It wasn't like, okay, kids, Dad lost to Hoover.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna, it wasn't like that. And really, he had a lot of success. And when you have a lot of success, some people think that maybe that makes the losses even harder. But again, because of our life experiences, we knew where the focus should be.
Yeah, it gives you perspective.
It should be on the blessings.
Right.
My cup is half full. Yours might be half empty, but guess what? Mine's half full. And that's part of being a coach, is working through, helping each other at home and helping each other on the court get through those things.
I think one of the biggest lessons to teach kids in a couple of different sports that are scored like a tennis match is that when you go to read the box score, it says this team beat this team 3-2. But they're so focused on tennis being an individual sport and what happened in their specific match, but their specific match is only 1/5 of the equation, because they're so focused on themselves. When you come together as one and realize it's about what the final score is of all of our matches, all 5 of the matches, it really makes you stronger as a unit, because then everybody's cheering for everybody. Everybody's just not looking out for the white lines that they're playing on. You know what I mean? And that's huge, because when that happens, the success or failure that comes from it becomes truly a team dynamic, and you realize how close you can be to help each other through any challenges that happen. But when it's a bunch of individuals, everyone's kind of alienated, and then they take their problems separate places and go to bed and come back the next day, and there's no connection there. When there's connection, the next day is the next challenge for all of us, not just me and my court. And that shift of educating on that part right there took some time. And it took a mind shift of players and parents. And that shift, when it happens, gets you a lot of support when you need it.
I think the two of the things that you said as I'm listening to you talk probably helped me understand, like, when I look at, and this sounds like a very left comment, but I think it's relevant, when you look at the PGA Tour and Live Golf and how a lot of the Live Golf guys are like, it's just so nice to have a team. It's so nice to have this cohesive team that I've built and be with those guys day in and day out, practice with those guys, gamble with those guys, challenge those guys, have fun with those guys. And it's just like something that in an individualistic sport outside like the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup, we don't get enough of.
So I know exactly what you're saying, and I think I have an answer for that. And Netflix is the reason for that. You've probably watched Full Swing.
My wife would hate that I have to watch Full Swing. Yes.
So I understand. I'm not a proponent of Live Golf by any means.
Sure.
But I totally understand the whole team aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because those guys played, more than likely, high school golf and college golf with their friends, their buddies, the people that they lived with. And then, boom, they're out on tour all by themselves.
Yeah.
Some of them not married, some of them just with a caddy, whatever. The opportunity to be teammates with 3 other guys probably gets them back to having, like a rock, a teammate, friends that they're with now all the time, that they play with, that they compete with, that they don't have on the PGA Tour.
Right.
So that was my take on that.
Absolutely.
Not for what Live, but the whole team aspect of it. And I think that's why so many of the guys like the thing that ESPN just put on, the TGL thing.
Yeah.
Because they have teammates.
Yeah.
And that you saw them interact with their teammates. Like, they loved that format. As you mentioned, Ryder Cup, President's Cup, whatever. It's team format. They probably feel like, man, I'm in college again.
And the other thing that you were talking about, this could be left field, but whether people like football or not, I still think the Friday Night Lights TV show, not just the movie, but the TV show, was really good. And I don't know why this phrase always struck me, but with the clear eyes and a full heart, you can't lose.
Right.
And I think sometimes still to this day, and I would imagine that NIL clouds a lot of it, makes the eyes very blurry. It may make the heart full, but there is a lot of losing because it's not with the right perspective. And as we get older, perspective hopefully becomes easier, but we are also put in a society that focuses on winning and losing. And if my perspective is on the losing end, well, then that's weakness, and I'm not winning, and I want to be a winner. So instead of garnishing the lesson there, I'm just going to push the lesson far away. And I think something else that you guys said that we had Carlin Isles in here months back was when you live by a philosophical principle known as Jesus Christ, and that informs everything at which you do, and you are in tune with the otherness that sometimes also gets lost in the most difficult times and the most glorifying times, that's what grounds us. And more often than not, if that's how you live and you angle back to that, life just becomes very crystal clear, even when it is dark and dreary per se. And I'm not here to say that people that aren't of Christian, Catholic, whatever denomination, followers of Christ can't find that. I think with us being followers of Christ, it just makes that much more sense as to how you guys have carried yourself, not only through your marriage, but how you carry yourself as a coach. Something that you blessed me with, you didn't even know it. I never knew that Mount Union was a Catholic university. I did not know that. And it made me wonder, in some way, shape, or form, even though I was only there for a semester, I was actually where I was supposed to be by God. And I never sought Mount Union or Walsh out for the religious aspects of my Catholic identity. But now, hindsight being 2020, it makes absolute sense of why I went to 2 Catholic universities.
God works in mysterious ways.
That man. That man does some things.
It's crazy. Our pastor, Pastor Bob, shout out to him. He says all the time, there's a plan. We don't know the plan. He knows the plan. We're just living it out. So
He also gave Keith permission to continue being a Browns fan.
Did.
Let's not do that.
Regardless
Let's
of
not.
the choices that are being made.
Let's not do that now.
Because Keith really struggled for a while.
Let's not do that now.
I did seek help on that. I did, and we're not going into that.
Yeah, that is a different podcast.
It sure is.
Different time now. But yeah, before we wrap up, I want to make sure that you guys have any platform, because to share any messages that you guys have found, again, that from the mental fitness of a coaching standpoint, how you help your players with their mental fitness, how even as a missus, a coach's wife per se, how you also play in that, because I do hope that other coaches will see this and they can also say, like, okay, it's not just the big guys or the big gals up top at the D1 level or the professional level. It's coaches across the board. And if there's any tools you guys could share to them, or the young men and women who have been impacted by you that say, I want to do what Keith did and I want to go into coaching, how and what are some of the tools that you may have wished you knew on the front end?
Wow, you got a lot of good questions there. So number one, as far as recruiting goes, I'm just blatantly honest. Like, I don't know how many times I've said this to recruits and parents. You're deciding on where you're going to spend the next 4 years of your life. You have to be comfortable socially, academically, and athletically here. And you're here to get a piece of paper that goes on the wall that opens up the next gate or next door of your life. Tennis is going to be part of your life after you graduate, but it's probably going to be recreationally on a Tuesday night with 3 other friends. And dinner might be involved afterwards. But the bills, the electricity, the car payment, the mortgage, the rent, whatever it looks like, is going to be paid for by the piece of paper on the wall, and that's what's important. And so many kids are focused on, I want to go here, I want to go there for athletics because athletics are going to do this for me. Yeah, athletics are going to do a lot for me. Your education's what's going to do it for you. That's what's going to pay the bills. And I'm looking for kids that buy into that and embrace that, because I know, number one, then they've got a good level head on their shoulders. They value education, and it's Division III. If they still want to be an athlete at that point, they're vested. They want to grind, and that's what we have to do, is grind as Division III athletes. So that's one of the lessons that I hope my players take away from the day they're recruited by me to the day they get their diploma. So, what do you got?
So when you came and visited Keith's teams, there was a word that you used quite a bit, and I actually took that word home and started using it, and I took it to school and started using it with my students, and it was the word intentional. And I
There was a lot of words there. I was getting kind of nervous.
But it was one that just, I heard it loud and clear. Maybe you only said it once or twice, but in my brain, I heard it over and over and over. And, you know, you so often see individuals who are just going through life. They're just walking the walk, but what are they getting out of it? Where's the fulfillment coming from? And that word intentional, like, are you in or are you out? And being somebody who is not an athlete, not even close to being an athlete, being the wife.
You did play high school tennis.
Well, I didn't. Being a wife of a coach and the mother of athletes, it's something that you have to be intentional about your time. You have to be intentional about what you're giving to the other people in your life, and they have to be intentional about what they're giving to you. And there's a balance, and that's one of the awesome things about being a part of athletics, is that it's not just about playing the game. There's these things that are so important, like accountability. You know, if you don't come to practice today, why weren't you there? If you come to practice but you don't do anything, why not? And being able to understand the whole person and what's going on with where were you, what are you doing, what are you thinking. Caden's on a big heist right now. He had some clothing stolen out of the laundry room at his dorm at Ohio State, and he's on a mission. And he wants to set up a stakeout tonight and find out who did it and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, dude.
Detective Caden.
Yeah, I talked to him. He loves the TV show Suits. I'm like, you're not Harvey Specter. I know you want to solve this, but let me tell you something. Whoever took your stuff, I get that it's gone and it hurts and it sucks. But whoever took it needed it for something bigger than what you needed it for. And so I tried to turn it around and say, listen, it's not worth it. You know, keep an eye out for it. If you see it, all right, great. I know it is a little harder because it's stuff that was from his girlfriend.
Gifted.
And, you know, gifts from his girlfriend. So there's some emotional attachment. But getting him to understand, you know, first of all, there's a bigger thing going on here. Maybe whoever needed it didn't have a hoodie. Maybe they can't pay a bill that's due and they needed to take it and sell it. And I said, not everybody is good. And that doesn't mean that you have to come to their level. That doesn't mean that you have to. I said, Caden, what happens if you find the person? Then what are you going to do? He's like, well, I didn't think about that. Oh. Well, if it's 2:30 in the morning and somebody comes in, now what? I said, there are crazy people in this world. You know, you got to think about it. I said, so just being intentional, being in the moment, thinking it through, accountability. Okay, that's not what I would have done, but that's what somebody else did. I'm going to take the life lesson. Mom just taught me that let's not leave our stuff in the laundry room all night and expect it to be there the next morning. You know, this is on you too. Let's take some accountability for what you did in this stuff now being gone. And I think that that's a wonderful thing that we have both learned as a couple is accountability. You know, okay, so I sat at home all weekend while you traveled and I didn't get to do this, this, and this, and this, and this. Is that fair for me to make him feel guilty because he traveled and had success with his team and enjoyed what he was doing and was making a difference in other people's lives? And, you know, just understanding that balance that comes into play with it. And that's true, I think, with what you're saying in the type of person that you recruit.
Yeah.
You want somebody who understands the accountability that's involved. I'm going to hold you accountable to do X, Y, and Z, but I also want you to understand you got to have balance.
100%.
When I did my master's program at Malone, when I walked in to orientation, the first thing they said was, okay, this is how we work here. God, family, work, school. That's the order. And I went, very funny. No, my entire MBA program was those 4 things in that order. Each class started with prayer requests. I remember going home after the first night and saying to him, I am not at Ohio State anymore, because it was like, whoa, And so when you have that extra faith, and, major shout out to all the athletes at Ohio State right now that are making a huge, huge intervention there for people to come and find the Lord and know the Lord and love the Lord. And that's awesome. But being intentional about what you're doing, who you're doing it for, that man upstairs, it's not about what's on the back or the front of a jersey. It's about the good Lord, and he's given you these tools. Use the tools and do something with it.
Yeah, and we're a faith-based team. Like, FCA is a major part of our week. Thursday is FCA night on campus, and close to half of the players are involved in that. One of the players is doing a testimonial next Thursday night at FCA. So that's a blessing, because that provides even more growth and tightness of a team/family.
Absolutely. Man, there is, wow. Y'all feeling my soul over here, honestly. I would like to thank y'all both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure.
Sharing so much helpful information. I hope that we don't push the podcast as much as we could, just because we're doing so many different things. And, honestly, this is just a fun thing for me to do. But I do hope that any coach, future coach, couple can learn from some of the wisdom that you guys have shared. I hope any player that listens to this can see the backside of what it is to be a coach, and how much really coaches go through alongside of what you are going through as well. I'd like to let the people know that the business of All Pass, I have written a manual specifically for coaches. So not only is there a player's mental fitness mentality manual, there is a coach's mental fitness mentality manual, because I do hope that coaches feel taken care of. And as one of our honorary first coach, it couldn't have been a better coach to choose. And it's a blessing to know both of you. And I appreciate you guys just being here and sharing your hearts and letting the people hear, the realities of what you guys do and the benefits to it and some of the challenges. Because I truly don't think people really understand. We just see, the man or the woman at the front of the helms that just point and yell and shout and encourage and hold accountable. So we forget about the humans behind it. And I think you said a lot of aha moments, and that's why it's the Athletes Helping Athletes podcast, and we're blessed to have you guys. So thank you for coming.
There's definitely challenges out there. I mean, you can have health challenges. You can have all kinds of challenges. I've coached through many health challenges. That's for darn sure. And as I said earlier, God's funny. Like, I had hand surgery, right hand and left hand, January and February last year. So tennis coach that can't grip a tennis racket. God's funny.
Yeah, it is very funny.
So it was a pleasure.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.